Hey, happy college football Saturday. It is week 6, and I'm just happy to still have a voice after Morgan Wallen last night. Appreciate all of you guys out there on the West Coast chiming in here early before kickoff. Everybody else on the East Coast and everybody in the middle, I hope you've had your coffee because we have a very busy show today. I am going to apologize. Arthur DeCesar's not going to be joining us today. He did, however, share some nice tidbits with me. So I'm going to share them with you before, of course, we get to VR. Kyle Anthony for some UFC talk, and then Ross Benjamin finishing up the rest of the hour with us, answering all of your college football questions. So that's what I need from you guys. Jump in the chat, drop us a question. If you got a comment, if you don't have a comment, at least give us a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So Art sent me, here are the sharp plays from the Westgate Superbook this morning. Auburn was bet down from 24, now 21. And they're playing the Alabama Crimson Tide, so be careful there. If you like the Tide, might be a little too late to bet the Auburn Tigers for me, though. Clemson, 15, bet up to 16.5. Couple interesting ones. Western Michigan from 7.5 up to 10.5. UMass plus 17.5, dropping all the way down to 14.5. Iowa was 20.5, now down to 17.5. And Louisiana, I'm guessing Louisiana ULL. I did not ask him to clarify. That was a 14-point favorite, now a 17-point favorite. Some notable publics, which some of these I'm happy about, some of these I'm not happy about. Washington is a public side, Louisville, public side, Miami of Florida, and Nebraska. So I'm happy to be on opposites of two of those this morning with my parlay. Let's see what else sharp action has been played since Wednesday, every single Wednesday on Bet On It. The Greek Gambler joins us and gives us his gold, and then he comes back. Oh, there you go. Ed Olson says, give me the gold. And then he comes back on Saturdays and Sundays here on WagerTalk's Last Call to follow up, tell us what's been bought back, and maybe what's really, truly the sharp play. VR, John Murray and I kind of got into it a little bit this week because on Bet On It, you said that the Chiefs got played, then the Saints got played, and there was conflicting information. Obviously, this is a college football show, but I would like to talk about when you do get that conflicting information, what you think people should do with it. So if they watch Bet On It and they watch the show, what is your recommendation there?
Yeah, personally, I deal with that every single day, Kelly, because I bet for multiple groups. And a lot of times a number will come in that I can't find, so I got to decide. Or if it's a half point off, do I still want to bet it? Is there still value there? And then I also have to deal with, is there conflicting information, or is there resistance even from another group once the line starts moving? There's a lot that goes into play. And what you have to remember is these betting syndicates are betting numbers. So a lot of times, even though they're on opposite sides at different numbers. That's the key there. Now, if they're on different sides at the same number, that's usually when I pass. When I say there, even if I have a strong opinion, that's when I'll always pass, because you just find yourself in a no-win situation. You're almost guessing at that point, and you never want to be in that position. You want to always bet from a position of strength. And when you know that there are 2+ EV bettors on opposite side, and we already know that 99.5 out of 100 bettors lose money long term, but these two actually turn a profit long term, and they disagree, there's no reason for you to try to pick the winner. Let them fight it out, and we're going to find out when the game is over. More times than not, it's such a small sample size of one game that there's randomness. We're not going to really know who was right or who was wrong. But at the end of the day, you won't know anyway. So what I'm trying to say is, when you're guessing, when you're put in a position where you have to guess, the best thing is to do is pass. It's almost like if you don't know what to do, they always say do nothing. Because more times than not, you're going to do the wrong thing if you don't know what to do. If it's not obvious, do nothing. And the same thing with betting. If it's not obvious, do nothing. So if you have two conflicting groups that you know are both plus EV, pass. There are bigger bets, better bets ahead. Never bet from a position of weakness. Always bet from a position of strength. And when you're guessing, you're betting from a position of weakness. Don't forget, we're already paying admission. To place a bet, you have to lay 11 to win 10. So every bet you place, you are paying admission to place that bet. Don't take it lightly. make sure you have conviction. And you can't have conviction when you know there's sharp money on both sides. So let that shit go and pass. Narrow down on the strongest stuff. You'll do just fine if you're able to get good numbers.
All right, if you guys have a question for VR, drop it in the chat. The Gold Rush, love you, Gianni. They do love VR. They always tell me in the comment section on bet on it. So make sure you guys check that college edition out before the games kick off. VR, every single week, I just kind of let you roll. You get a lot of information, and that paper looks full this morning.
It does. And what I want to bring on is actually what I've already narrowed down is these are legit moves. There's absolutely no questions about them. And the strongest are usually first halves, team totals. Whenever they're using those derivatives, those have always been the strongest place. Let me give you two team totals that I bet and confirmed so far this morning. Wake Forest team total under 24.5, and Navy team total over 22.5. Over 22, excuse me. Those two team totals got bet. Those are legit. Here's some first half totals. First half totals. Auburn, Georgia, under 27.5. Appalachian Marshall, over 27.5. UMass Northern Illinois, under 21.5. Navy Air Force, over 17.5. These are all first halves. Kansas, Arizona State, over 24. Drop down to Rutgers and Nebraska, over 28. Minnesota USC, under 24. And first half side, UCLA plus 17. Those are some of the first halves that are as legit as it comes. And remember, those first halves, those team totals, those usually have the biggest edges for the betting syndicates. And you could tell the smaller limits that they offer on these type of bets. Now, some of the sides that we got down on earlier in the week that there was been no resistance on. Two that you touched on that you shared from Art. Western Michigan getting no resistance at all. Bet up from 7, 8, 9. They continue to get bet on. And UMass, for some reason, from plus 20 all the way down to 17. I could lay 16.5 and have a ticket at 20, 21, and they don't want the middle. So for whatever reason, they think that UMass line is way too high and that Western Michigan line is way too low. Couple other sides real quickly. I gave you Vandy over Alabama in the first half, plus about 2 touchdowns, 13.5 actually, and Washington Huskies. Got bet up on the point spread, got bet up on the money line, and another side where I'm seeing absolutely no resistance at all.
No resistance at all. I like the Washington side, VR. Those are types of spots where, for me, you kind of have that, I don't know, like a buy low, even though they are the home favorite there. Anything else that you have for us before we let you go?
No, honestly, I'll tell you the truth. What I like is that there's more legit moves than manipulation and middles that been able to narrow down. But when you do that, there's just not that much volume. Because you got to remember, almost every one of these lines are going to move and are going to get bet. But most times they're just getting bet into shape is what's happening. So be cautious confirming any kind of legit plays unless you see a significant move. Unfortunately, when it moves significantly, most of the value has been extracted. But I want to share real quickly what I see in the back end because I have a back end that I get to look at that has some of the squarest sheets you've ever seen. So real quickly, the heaviest bet size that I'm seeing, when you see a dog getting bet by the public, pay attention. They usually are laying the favorites. South Carolina plus 9.5, getting a ton of public money. Navy minus the 10, getting a ton of public money. Army minus 14, ton of public money. Texas A&M minus the 3. These are all one-sided. Everything I'm telling you is one-sided, meaning the ticket count is at least 10-1 in the ratio of the side that I'm giving you. Rutgers, at least 10-1 in the side of Rutgers. Minnesota plus 8, at least 10-1 in the side of Minnesota. And finally, UCLA. So some of that, keep in mind, is mixed in with sharp bets as well. But when you have an overwhelming ticket count, rest assured, it's public money. And on those sides, it's one-sided. And pay attention also, if those lines move a little bit, most times it's not sharp money. It'll move a half a point, maybe a point. That's money moving it, not necessarily sharp money. It just means there's not sharp money the other way. So they're having to reflect that public money coming in because there's a ton of public money on Saturdays.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not good for me. I am on South Carolina, I am on Minnesota, and I am on Rutgers. VR, couple questions from the chat. If you have a few moments.
Absolutely.
T Loading Entertainment. I'm guessing is that what that stands for. He wants to talk about the North Carolina game. And then I'd like to correct myself. For some reason, when I opened the show, I said Auburn, Alabama. I meant Auburn, Georgia, of course.
You got to go with this side. This game's pretty easy for me as far as the bet. I don't even have to look at any kind of X's and O's. For me, it's North Carolina or pass. For me, it's North Carolina or pass. Because every time you see a side like Pittsburgh getting so much money from the betting public, and yet every time it hits 3, there's someone like me taking that 3 on North Carolina, you got to pay attention to it. Doesn't mean it's going to win, but it means that appears to be where the EV is. If you could get North Carolina at plus a field goal at home, it seems like a really good bet. That's why every time it pops up, there's someone there that has a positive EV account that's betting it. So for me, it's an easy bet. It's North Carolina or leave the game alone. And with the line having moved, it kind of makes sense. Because if you're going to get Pittsburgh, you probably should have bet them earlier in the week. You could have got 1.5. You could have got even pick them earlier. So why lay 2.5 now? That's left the station. If you like the Pittsburgh side, you have to look at it and say, that train's left the station. I could have got pick'em. I could have got 1.5. I could have got money line at minus 115. Why would I lay 2.5 or 3 this morning? It makes absolutely no sense. So that's where you got to leave it alone. Because again, you won't be betting from a position of strength if you're not getting a good number. You're now hoping to be the product of good luck. That's not where you want to find yourself. You want to find yourself having Pittsburgh at a pick'em or -1 in your pocket. You look up today, it's 2.5 or 3. You did your job. It doesn't matter what happens. You did your job. You do that over and over again, I promise you, you will be in that 0.5% that actually makes money betting sports. That's the job. So for me, that's why that game's easy. It's North Carolina or pass, home dog, and I wouldn't take the points. Where it sits now, the 2.5 ain't going to help you. Take the money line. If you get plus 110 or better, that's the side to bet there.
Yeah, I did that last weekend with North Carolina VR, and it was not very pretty. I'll say that. Andrew Wojcicki I know someone that has Penn State big, also Ohio State in the look-ahead spot with Oregon last week, Iowa plus 18. Art did mention that Iowa plus 20 did get bet. Any confirmation there from you, VR?
On Iowa?
Yes.
Yeah, looking at Iowa real quick. If you guys do me a real quick favor when you ask the question on a particular team, say the bet number. That's just how I'm used to looking up this stuff. With the bet numbers, because there's just so many games. But Iowa, absolutely. Here's what we see with Iowa right now. It continues to come down. It's come down from 20. It's down to 17.5, and we got absolutely zero resistance on the Iowa side, and we got nothing but Ohio State money from the betting public. That's usually a good sign for the underdog. The only negative is you're now not getting the best number to bet the Iowa. Meaning if you could get Iowa at plus 20 right now, you'd have an amazing bet. Obviously, that's no longer available. Personally, I would take the Iowa side if I had to take the bet, but I probably wouldn't take it only because of the significant move now. Remember I said in week 1, if you got down on the steam move at the opener, you cashed over 60% of your tickets. If you got down at the close after it moved 3 points, you didn't even break even. You actually lost juice. So this is one of those that's already moved 3 points. So I would conclude that the EV is gone if it was there. So I would, again, not be betting from that position of strength. I think Iowa's the right side. It's the only side I would bet in this spot, but I don't think I'd still be getting the best of it. I think then I'd be hoping that the wise guys were right, and since they cover, I cover as well. But I don't have the same number as them, so I kind of would leave it alone. But it is Iowa or pass.
He is the Greek Gambler at Greek_Gambler on all your social media channels. VR, you are the best. We will see you again tomorrow morning on the NFL edition of Last Call. Let's bring in Kyle Anthony. We're going to do a little UFC talk. Anytime we have some of these big UFC events, we like to bring in the #1 UFC handicapper over at WagerTalk. Let's get him in here. We love Kyle because he brings us winners. I hate when I'm opposite of Kyle. I think I'm like 1-9 when you and I are opposite. Literally. I'm almost positive if I'm on the opposite of one of your bets, I lose every single time.
Yeah, it's we had the Marab, we had the Pereira Yuri. We've had a few, but we always try to talk a little bit before it. But I try to talk you off of a couple things. But let's see how this weekend goes.
Let's see how it goes. You got a couple of plays for us. Let's go Raquel Pittington, Juliana Pena first. This is an interesting one between these two ladies. Break it down for me.
Yeah, so here we have the current champion, Raquel Pennington. She's around minus 170. On the comeback, you've got Juliana Pena. She's about plus 145. Now, this is definitely going to be the opposite of what the main event's going to be. Main event, I'm expecting a lot of action, big shots, knockdowns. Here, I definitely expect the opposite. I think a lot of cage pushing, holding up against the fence, top control on the ground. And when you're looking at it overall, really, I think the first thing here is that Pennington has terrible striking. I mean, her striking is not very good at all. The way she comes forward, she's sloppy, she's hittable, lackluster striking defense. And on the other side, you've got Pennington. She's definitely not this high-level striker, but she's definitely a little bit more polished, a little bit more with the volume, definitely a little bit more when you're just talking about accuracy overall. But when you look at the opportunity for Penne, it's really going to be her ground game. She needs to get this fight to the ground. She needs to start utilizing some of that top control, her submission ability. And I think that the footwork and the 60% takedown defense rate for Raquel will hold up here. I think that she can kind of, work from the outside, land big shots. But the biggest issue for me here that I look at the Juliana side is the first thing is that she hasn't fought in 2 years. And I think that already brings a big red flag to her side. And then you loop in the fact that she's now 35 years old. The last time she fought was back in 2022 against Amanda Nunes, which was a fight she got absolutely dominated in. And since then, she's been nowhere, where you've got Raquel, who's been active, who is on a 6-fight win streak, who has looked good, and has definitely fought the higher caliber of opponents overall. And really where I'm going with this play when you're looking at it is, with Pennington, she, out of her last 10 victories, 9 are by decision. I think that's where this goes here. I think it's going to be up against the cage, holding her, positionally winning, just landing enough to bank the rounds. And when you're looking at Pennington right now, she's about plus 115, plus 110 in that area. I think it's a good spot and a likely path.
All right, Kyle, really quick before we get into your next play, what do you have over up at WagerTalk for UFC 307?
Yeah, so this tonight, I say this Saturday, it already is. I have a 5% best bet up right now, 11-0 on these plays overall. We had Marab minus 115. We not long ago had Dricus Duplessis at a 5% at plus 120. So we've got another nice spot here, nice price here. Also, again, always have that plus money on my client play cards here. So gonna have 4 or 5 plays overall. You can check that out WagerTalk.com.
It's actually really funny because I have a login to WagerTalk, and all I have to do is look in the back end to see what your 5% UFC plays are. And yet I don't. I place wagers prior to doing so like a complete and utter idiot. Joke's on me. All right, let's move along. Let's go Ryan Spain. Ovince St. Pro? Did I say that right? Pro? I don't know how to speak French. Help me out.
Pro, you can do it, yeah. Or OSP. We could just call him OSP.
OSP, yes, of course.
So in this spot here, we've got Ryan Spann. He is minus 275. On the comeback here, you've got OSP. He's about the plus 220 mark. Now, the first thing when you're looking at this fight here, this fight was supposed to happen about a month ago. It got pushed back. But the biggest thing when you're looking at this fight is that both these guys are finishers, heavy hitters, willing to move forward, but are extremely, extremely untrustworthy, unreliable. They're both mistake-ridden, and that's a big issue here. You look at OSP, 27 victories, 20 by finish. You look at Ryan Spann, 21 victories, 18 by finish. And the big thing here is that Ryan Spann is a great hammer, a terrible nail. Like when things are going good, this guy can move forward, throw shots, look for takedowns, positionally win, submission hunt, all of these things that he looks to do. When things just start to go against him a little bit, there's resistance, he really starts to collapse. He makes a lot of mistakes. He really just allows his opponent to kind of get back into the fight, even when he has a dominant position. And then also the fact that he's a massive front runner. He's the kind of guy that's going to go out there, look to really be killed or be killed. Out of his 14 UFC fights, 9 have finished in the first round, and he's 5-4 over that span. So it's not that he's going out there and absolutely dominating in the first round, but he will look to push forward. Now, he's also coming off 3 straight losses, and 2 of them he got finished in. So it's not that he is really looking great at all. Both these guys, again, have a lot of mistakes. But you look at Ovince St. Preux, he's not the guy that has a nearly minus 300 number next to his name here. And you also look at the fact that he's coming off of a career best performance, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if it, secret juice, eating his Wheaties. I don't know what he was doing, but 143 significant strikes landed in a 3-round fight. That just eclipsed by far the most strikes he's landed. He goes out there, gets a victory. He was about a plus 400 underdog in that spot. And again, I think this is kind of the same situation. I think that there's going to be a lot of mistakes that can be made here on the Spann side. And you're looking at this big plus money. I do think that OSP has the opportunity to land the bigger shots, to kind of weather that early storm. But I do think that he gets the job done. And I just think this is a dog or pass spot here.
Dog or pass? I love betting on these UFC underdogs with you, Kyle. All right. Anything else you'd like to touch on? If we have any questions from the chat, drop them in for Kyle. You got any little tidbits on the main event?
Yeah, I could go to the main event here. We got Alex Pereira, obviously, versus Khalil Roundtree here. And this is a spot here where I have been consistent. I have been betting Pereira, as me and Kelly were talking a little bit, against Yuri, against Jamal Hill. I've just consistently bet him. Now, obviously, this number is very wide, and for all the right reasons. I mean, the guy's a world beater. We don't have to get into really how great he is. But my problem here is really about, this is really Khalil Roundtree coming up, and it's a terrible rise to the title for him. I mean, he's really beaten low-level guys overall. Some guys aren't even in the UFC overall. I mean, he beat Carl Roberson, who's on an 0-4 run fighting in bare knuckle. He beat Dustin Jacoby, who's on a 1-4 run in the UFC. He beat Chris Daukaus, who's on an 0-4 run in the UFC, and Anthony Smith, who's a UFC analyst, who's on a 2-3 run. So I just think that this is just way too much for him. This is a spot where I just don't see this lasting very long. They're both strikers. Khalil is not a guy who's going to look for takedowns. Out of his 14 UFC fights, he has 0 takedowns. So I don't think he turns into, Khabib Nurmagomedov here and diving at legs. I think he's going to stand. He's going to strike. That's why they put him in this spot here. So getting off the big minus 500 number, I think this happens inside the first 2 rounds. I think Pereira gets the job done, can go out there and get that knockout. So knockout within the first 2 rounds is hanging around minus 120, minus 110. I think it's a likely path, and I think he does it in brutal fashion here.
All right, Kyle Anthony, UFC 307. We got a question from Dustin H. Kayla Harrison by decision or finish? Do you have an opinion on this fight?
Yeah, this is one where, Kayla has got all the hype behind her. She's like a minus 1,000, and again, a lot of good reasons why she is that big number. But this is by far the toughest opponent that she has faced in Ketlen Vieira. And Vieira is no slouch on the ground. She definitely has some power. She's a big girl, too. Both these females are big for the division. And what I think that this kind of plays into is the fact that Kayla is going to get these takedowns. She is a strong wrestler. She's going to win positionally. I just don't think she's going to go out there and get the finish. She was finishing a lot of females in the PFL, and, no offense to that organization, but there's a lot of shit fighters there. And this is a spot where she's fighting the best female she's faced. I think that she can win it. I think she can win it positionally. She can bank rounds. So you're looking at Kayla by decision is a plus number, is like plus 110, roughly around there. I think that's the path for her. And I think it could be a little bit of a lay and pray for her, but I think she gets the job done by decision.
All right, he is Kyle Anthony at Kyle Anthony UFC on X. Kyle, we appreciate you bringing all of your UFC knowledge. 5% play up at WagerTalk.com right now. WT.buzz/KA. Be right back while I go log into my WagerTalk account so I know not to bet against Kyle's 5% play. He is 11-0 on those. All right, guys, now we're going to do only college football talk the rest of the show. Ross Benjamin, 9-0 on his 4% college football best bets here on the season. He has been absolutely crushing since he got to WagerTalk, 99-67. That is almost 60% since 2022. Number 1 in college football. Ross Benjamin, sorry I did not remind myself to put in my VSiN picks or to set our lineup for last call this morning. But I appreciate the fact that you are here so that I can just sit back and relax. My job is done, like VR said. I've got some nice CLV trophies. Let's break down some college football games. What do you say?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for having me, Kelly. And, I'm here. That's the end result. So everything's good. Kelly, I listened to Gianni talk, and he brings a very unique perspective, and he gives a lot of good information out. But here's the thing, folks, and this is not to put Gianni down at all. I am the sharp money in college football. Okay, Kelly just mentioned my record. It's number one at WagerTalk. In addition, folks, the bottom line is my net profit over since December the 2nd of 2022 over $8,500 and 60%, as Kelly just said. So I am not only the sharp money, but I am betting from a position of strength. So I needed to say that. You know, I'm not a cocky guy, but I'm a confident guy, Kelly.
Yeah, Ross Benjamin's been in the industry as long as I can remember, and I've been in this industry for about 15 years now. Kind of crazy to say. I'm sure that Ross has been in it just a little bit longer than I have.
You've aged better, I should say.
Well, I'll take that. I don't feel it this morning, not gonna lie. Partying with my sister-in-law at, till 2:00 in the morning last night. Not my brightest move, but I am here for you guys. We're gonna push through it. We're gonna get some college football winners. We've got 33 minutes until kickoff. So if you guys are asking questions, we're gonna keep it going. The questions stop. I'm going to get out of here. So drop some questions in the chat you have for Ross. Ross, let's go over some of your free picks right now that you have up at WagerTalk. One that I agree with, I laid 2.5. I have a terrible number. I joke all the time about how I get some of the best numbers. Last week, I had a great number with Western Kentucky. A couple weeks before that, a great number with Cal. Sometimes I get the worst of the numbers, and this was not a great one. So I laid 2.5 with the Washington Huskies. I love betting against ranked teams catching points, and I'm just not overly impressed with Michigan this year. Can you break down why you also like Washington?
I'll make it real simple. You have the number 10 team in the country facing a 2-loss team in Washington, and they're a 2.5-point underdog, which means if the game was played in Michigan, what would they be, a 3 or 3.5-point favorite? I mean, that line speaks volumes to me. And I agree with you, Kelly. You look at Michigan, especially offensively, they're far from a top 10 team. I think this is a brand name rank. And I think before it's all said and done, Michigan is lucky by the year's end, they're going to be a top 25 team. I definitely like Washington in this spot. You might even want to entertain using the money line on this game as well, instead of laying the 2.5, but I'm okay with laying the 2.5. Either way, I like the Washington Huskies in the spot, Kelly.
Yeah, I've got the WagerTalk odds screen open right now, down to 1.5 in a lot of spots. Money line, minus 120, 125. Make sure you guys like to shop around if you are going that angle. Chevy Bra wants to know, Virginia versus Boston College. Is Virginia minus 1.5 the sharp side? I bet against Boston College the last 2 weeks. And last week I got very lucky that their starting quarterback was out. I did not get very lucky that I lost Western Kentucky on the money line. That being said, Boston College sniffed out a win. Do you think they can do so again today?
This is one of my premium picks on the 12 o'clock card, but I'll give it to you anyway. Castellanos is back this week, the starting quarterback for Boston College. Even without them last week, they eked out a 1-point win at home against Western Kentucky. Not exactly inspiring. I'm not sold on Virginia, though, and I think when Boston College is is the small favorite here on the road, I think they're giving you the winner here. I'm on BC over Virginia in this spot.
I could see a nice bounce back spot for Bill O'Brien's crew. Virginia Tech versus Stanford. Here's an interesting one. I do a show with bookmaker John Murray from the Westgate Superbook, Ross, on Thursdays. He gave me Stanford +9 early in the week. Any of these little no card plays, I just blindly bet them. We got the cash with Syracuse last night. Are you going with the bookmaker side here with Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, Stanford, if you look at the fact that Virginia Tech, look, how are they going to react emotionally after that disheartening loss against Miami, a game they led a lot of the way. They allowed Miami to score the go-ahead touchdown with 1:20 to go. And then we know what happened on the final play of the game. It was a Hail Mary touchdown pass that was called a touchdown on the field, and then it was overturned by instant replay. So I just don't think coming off that emotional and distraught loss that they went through in that spot and going on the road against a team like Stanford, which first year ACC team, not exactly a world beater right now, although they did beat Syracuse and hand Syracuse their only loss. So I just think this is a good spot for the home dog in a vulnerable spot for the road favorite in this game.
Yeah, you can still get Stanford. There's some 8.5s out there, so definitely shop around. If you guys have a question for Ross, make sure you drop it in the chat. Over here checking TikTok right now. I'm checking Instagram. I've got the producers checking. Oh, there we go. YouTube. Thoughts on Wake Forest, NC State?
Yeah, I think, NC State right now, you're looking at this line. If this game was played even a few weeks ago, you would have saw NC State as a 12 or 13-point favorite in this game. But, you look at what NC State's done this year. They've been the most overvalued team in college football up until this point, and they've been a major disappointment. A lot of people were talking about NC State being a sleeper for the college football playoff, one of the favorites in the ACC, and they haven't not lived up to expectations. But this is a Wake Forest team that can't stop anybody defensively. I just think this is a wake-up call here for North Carolina State. They're facing an opponent that's very vulnerable and that they could move the ball on at will. And like the character Francis said in the movie Stripes, when they asked him, what do you like most about joining the Army? And he said, I finally get to kill somebody. So I think that applies to North Carolina State against Wake Forest in this situation.
Very good point. Wake Forest, always kind of one of those scrappy teams there in the ACC, but man, has NC State looked down this year. We've already touched on this game a little bit, but let's hear your opinion. VR said North Carolina or pass at this point in time. Ross, what are your thoughts on Pittsburgh being a road favorite? Can I really trust Pat Narduzzi not to just keep kicking field goals here? North Carolina on the other end, I was on him last week, and boy, was that heartbreaking. I had back-to-back heartbreaks in the 3:30 slate with Auburn and North Carolina, and I was like, all right, enough. Just take me out to pasture and put me down.
Yeah, this public money that VR was talking about is, it's duly noted. But here's the thing. I compare this similar to Virginia Tech, which I just said, coming off that emotional loss. This is a North Carolina team that blew a 20-0 second-half lead against their arch rival, Duke, last week, lose the game 21-20. The week before, they hosted James Madison, and they got blown out 70-50 in a game that really wasn't as close as even the final score indicated. They were down by 32 points at the half. This is a team that's down right now, and Pittsburgh is coming off a bye week. They got a lot of momentum at 4-0. I'd like the Pitt Panthers in this spot.
Ooh, interesting. All right. Well, I'm not getting involved one way or the other. I do not trust this North Carolina team. All right. Thoughts on Georgia Tech Duke? B Daddy. John Murray told me on Thursday, Georgia Tech got some early sharp money. As I just mentioned, North Carolina just choked it up late against a Duke team. Does Duke carry in that momentum over into today?
Boy, you guys must be looking at the picks I have up for sale when you're asking me these questions. I'm not going to be as nice this time around. I have a 4% top play on this game, 9-0 with my college football, 4% top plays. That's a 9-0 run. So I'm going to have to reserve comment respectfully here, Kelly.
Absolutely. You have the right to reserve that comment. That's hilarious. And, maybe if the host was doing her job this morning, she would have recognized that was on your plays list. Drew? Oh, boy. Drew's trying to really challenge me with this one. Furstenberger? Okay. Baylor, Iowa State. Talk me off my boys. He is an Iowa State guy. Look, here's a Baylor team, Ross. Last week, I kind of considered laying the points with them over BYU. They just couldn't get anything going early. Tried to get the win late and just fell flat. I think Dave Aranda's on the hot seat down there in Waco. Iowa State looking pretty decent, right? Matt Campbell's team always starts to do this thing, and then they start to kind of unravel. And then, oh, by the way, then they beat my Kansas State Wildcats that are generally undefeated. And that's been an awful cycle since I was probably 10 years old.
Which is about 5 years ago. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't think Iowa State is as good as their record indicates. I don't think Baylor is as bad as the record indicates. Yeah, Dave Aranda is definitely on the hot seat. Iowa State, tremendous defensively, but they really struggle offensively. And I just think laying a double-digit number in this spot, I have a very small lean towards Baylor. I'm not going to bet on this game personally myself, but just a professional opinion. I'm going to take Baylor here, plus the double-digit number.
Yeah, God, I don't know. All right, Matt Kurtz wants to know thoughts on Penn State. I have on my long list, Penn State over was a sharp play early in the week at the Westgate Superbook from John Murray. I missed the number. So usually if it's a half point off when he gives them to me on Thursdays, I'll go ahead and jump in. But after a point in time, now I think the sharps bet it early. Now the public's betting it late. Your thoughts on Penn State? We know James Franklin sure loves to cover the spread, but boy, last week that Illinois defense gave them fits.
Sure did. I mean, this is a large number, right, Kelly? I mean, 28.5 or so, the last I checked. These are games to me, folks. When you had this big a board, why would you screw it a game like this? It's laying over 4 touchdowns, even as good as Penn State is and how poor UCLA looks right now. I just think there's better value on the board than to mess with these types of games, laying this big a number. So, I mean, if we're talking a Friday night card with maybe 1, 2, 3 games, and you're looking for the best value out of those 2 or 3 games, maybe that's an option. But on a card this big, there's a hell of a lot more value, whether you like the dog or the favorite here, than this game itself.
Yeah, looking at the list from VR, he said they played UCLA first half plus 17 for what it's worth. All right, expat Mark Soul Palace wants to know if you should keep riding Tennessee. Ross, give me your opinion on this Vols team. I won't say I was dead wrong on them just yet. I've kind of been on the opinion of they haven't really played anybody. They haven't really showed me anything. And there's an argument there about how dominant they were in Norman. But I don't know really what to make of this Tennessee team. I'd love to back the Razorbacks today. They were on my long list, especially going into Fayetteville. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Arkansas, I thought, deserved a better fate in that loss against Texas A&M last week, losing by 4. And this is also an Arkansas team that lost in overtime at Oklahoma State. So they've been extremely competitive. Having said that, yeah, I know Tennessee hasn't really played anybody of note, but they've dominated every opponent they play. So, again, this is a hard one for me to gauge, Kelly. But, catching 2 touchdowns at home against a team that's really been, you could make a case better than the record indicates. I'd have a small lean here on the underdog, but this is certainly not a game I'm going to wager on, or it's not going to be part of my premium package as well.
All right, a couple of Instagram questions and a couple of TikTok questions, and we're going to get you out of here. Actually, let's go to Preston first. Preston, the Auburn spread has come all the way down to 21. Is it time to look at Georgia? We also have a similar question. No, we do not. I take that back, from Instagram. So let's break down this one. I misspoke earlier. I said Alabama. It's because I was a little hungover to start the show. This is a truth circle, guys. Remember, we're all family here. I'm doing this for you, not for myself. I get this information for free. I can text Ross Benjamin and say, Ross, what is your 4% college football play? All jokes aside, Preston, I don't know. I think you might be a little too late. This one got bet up from 24 all the way down to 21. We're starting to see some 20 and a halves even on the odd screen. I think you might be a little too late to the party.
I think there's still some value at 21. And the only reason why I would entertain taking Auburn in this game is the fact that Georgia, coming off last week's emotional game against Alabama, that they made a furious second half comeback and almost won that game. So having said that, again, this is a small lean situation, purely an opinion play. But I still think if it goes under 21, I'd stay away. I'd still have a small lean toward Auburn at 21 or more in this game.
Ross, here's kind of my thing. Georgia has this year played down to their opponents. Auburn will play up, but can they keep control of the football? The most infuriating thing about this team is they continue to turn the ball over. And sometimes I just get to the point, like after last week's loss, where I'm like, you know what? You're on my do not bet list. I do not trust you. As a professional handicapper, do you ever do that? Or is it purely just a numbers thing? Like Auburn does not pass the eye test for me right now. I understand the math side of things. I understand the X's and O's, but sometimes I have to say, you know what? This is not a good football program right now in terms of being able to keep control of the football. I want nothing to do with them.
Yeah, it's a good point, Kelly, and it's something you should always consider. But by the same token, remember this. If we know about exactly what you just talked about, which is all accurate, it's all I 100% agree with, the odds makers do too. So it's all factored into the line. I will say that Peyton Thorne, even though I think he threw 4 interceptions last week, correct me if I'm wrong, but he did pass for a lot of yards. He was benched and he came back. That's why I would stay away from this game. It's just a small opinion play for me. But yeah, I mean, for example, the eye test to me, the Navy Air Force game, for example, that Gianni talked about earlier, is my eye test. I watched Navy this year and every game they played. And this is not the Navy we've seen in years past, Kelly, and yet there's a lot of public money on Navy today. And they've gone from that opening number of 8 to 10, but sometimes the public money wins, Kelly. And for it to go to 8 to 10, I'm sure the public had a little to do. Public money had a little to do with that move. But I got to believe there's a sprinkle of sharp money within that as well. So it's a perfect example of what you're saying is your eye test. Sometimes trust what you see sometime, but to get caught up in all the player statistics and such, if you're going to do that, you might as well play fantasy. Just keep in mind, if we know all these factors, the odds makers do too.
Very, very good stuff from Ross Benjamin. As I mentioned, he's 9-0 on his college football, 4% best bets since my birthday of last year, as a matter of fact. I just saw the date on that one. I love to see it. All right, tell me what else you've got up at WagerTalk for this beautiful Saturday before we let you go.
Well, you got about 7. What do we got here? We got about 16 minutes. So I got 3 games in the noon portion of the window. All in the same package, $24. You could also get, I have the first half play in the Boise State game. I also have a closer tonight. I call it my Saturday night closer, and it comes in the Miami and Cal game. And I got a feeling me and Kelly agree on that game. So anyway, 11-4 the last 3 college football Saturdays, folks. Again, 98 and 67, 59%. A profit of over $8,500 since December 3rd of 2022. That's number 1 at WagerTalk during that course of time. And since the start of last year in college football, since the start of last season, I should specify, number 1 in college football, 82.59 record, $4,694 profit. Folks, I don't know what you're waiting for. And I know a lot of you jumped in last night on my Syracuse play, plus the points, outright winner over UNLV. What a game that was. We'll take it. And I don't know why you wouldn't invest in me long-term, especially when it comes to college football right now. Like I said before, I am the sharp money, and I am betting from a position of strength.
Ross Benjamin, everyone, thank you for participating in the chat today. Thank you for hitting that like button. We love you all, and we hope you have a profitable Saturday. We'll be back here tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We'll see if we can't get a bookmaker from the Westgate to show up today. What do you say?